The pros and cons of playing high school soccer. Everybody that I talk to always asks me what I think about high school soccer, and I think it could be a very, very good experience. I think it could be a very, very bad experience. I think there's pros and cons, and it just depends on where your player is at in the game and the school that they're going to and the situation and the program that they're going into.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
The first con, the first negative, is bad coaching. I think that most of the time, I think that some high school coaches don't really know what they're necessarily doing. I think their experience, they're the type of coaches that really tend to stay and coach the old school way. Haven't really adjusted with the modern game. The first pro is good coaching. There's plenty of great coaches. My three biggest mentors were high school coaches. I mean, they were also very high-level club coaches, and they were high-level like ODP coaches and regional type coaches. But for the most part, you know, those guys were just unbelievable coaches that I learned from. So it could go both ways. There's tons of great coaches coaching in a game, and the prerequisite for most athletic directors are getting away from it must be a teacher. And the more that we have outside coaches, the better your coaches are most likely going to be. If your school district still has where to be able to coach, you must teach, that's where a lot of the coaches that are behind and how they get jobs. Another con is just too many games in a short amount of time. And the last time I coached varsity soccer, I believe that I had 20 games in about 9 weeks. 20 games in 9 weeks. That's more than 2 per week. That's a problem. There's no time for recovery in high school soccer. And it's amazing when kids get back to their high-level clubs, you would expect them to be in shape, but they're not in shape. They're actually torn down and beaten down. When you have a game like on a Tuesday and then a game on a Thursday, that Wednesday practice session is usually shot. You can't do a lot, especially for the players that you know, play most of the minutes. So, you know, when we talk about training to game ratio, it's about equal for how much, and if you do it by minutes and by hours, it's almost the exact same, and that's not good. And that's why the Development Academy was really created, was to get to our training to game ratio to 3-to-1 and not 1-to-1. The top pro for playing high school soccer is really for players that are falling out of love of the game or falling out of love with the game. The players that we're going to lose or we're in jeopardy of losing, I think that high school soccer is very, very good for them, because you get all of these outside factors impacting your experience, whether it be your friends coming out to watch the game, it could be your names in the paper, it could be pictures in the paper, it could be morning announcements. You score a goal or you get a shutout and your name is on the morning announcements. That does great. That is a great experience for players, and that is just something that club soccer does not provide, even if it's ECNL, DA, whatever. The cons. Another con is, you know, the competition in squad is just not very good. The level of your teammates just aren't where you're at, and it can be very frustrating for a top level player where you're thinking one thing and your teammates aren't even at near the same level of figuring out what you're doing, and it can be very frustrating for a player. And that leads to, well, I can't wait for the high school season to be over so we can play club soccer. Every single player that I've ever been around, when I've been a coach or an observer, is kids can't wait for high school season. And a lot of times during club season, they can't wait for high school season, and they can't wait for club season. It just goes both ways, and it's nuts. But competition in the level of your teammates is a huge thing. One of my favorite things about high school soccer was the bus rides, especially after a win. The bus rides home were a riot after a win. And playing under the lights at a 7 p.m. game in October, just the adrenaline and the excitement, and that was my favorite experience. I know a lot of schools in New York, they play games at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. That kind of sucks. And schools in Michigan, they stopped having buses take kids home just for budget cut purposes, and that's probably coming to New York soon at some point. But you know, that's part of the high school experience that, again, you don't really have in club as much. The local competition, the competition that you're playing, just isn't as good. I mean, when you see score lines of 8-0, 10-0, there's no mercy rule in New York. So I see games 12-0. Why? You know, in Michigan, there's a mercy rule where you score 8 goals at halftime, that game's over. If you're up by 8 goals at any point in the second half, the game's over. So, I mean, sometimes just the overall competition, and you know, you have to travel 2 hours to get a good game. That's a problem, you know. And it's just, whereas in the ECNL and the DA, you're going to get a good game every week. A pro for high school is for the best players. Let's say the best player on the high school team plays center back for their club team. Most likely that player is going to play up top or going to play in the midfield. And that is so good for players because it provides new problems that they have to solve, new situations that they have to get comfortable in. And I think it's, again, it's a confidence builder. It's getting kids out of their comfort zone. And I tell my players to tell their coaches to play them in other positions than at their club. So then that's basically kind of the position is developing them in a different way than their clubs are. So new positions are key. Try to get your coach to play you in different positions than where you play at a high level club. It kind of falls back with coaching is most clubs have a development curriculum and periodization of how they're training and what they're working on, and a development pathway throughout the entire club and throughout a career. High schools are lacking in that because, again, you only get the players for 2 months, 3 months, you know, August, September, and October, and it's done. It's not a lot of periodization that you can get through because you need to win. You need to win games early on. If you want to win league, in some states you have to qualify for, you know, the state tournament and stuff like that. So you have to win. So you can't really, you know, you don't really get to look out for every single player in that regard. You're worried about your starting 11 and the next 3 players, and then the bottom half of the roster is really development players, really, at the high school level. And the number one negative in high school soccer for me is that I feel that there are so many more injuries in high school soccer to the best players than in ECNL and Development Academy. And here's my theory, and this is why. When you get a high level player playing in high school soccer, they are quicker on the ball than everybody else. they're better on the ball than everybody else, and their speed of play and their ability on the ball is so much quicker that how many times do you see a player cut the ball real quick and then a player, the slower player on the other team, just comes out and whacks them out of nowhere? It's because, again, the overall competition that they're playing against is slower and not as good and not as experienced as that player, and so a lot of injuries happen. Top player in New York, ACL just now. A player in Michigan, ACL just now. It happens so much more in high school because you have the top players and then you have players way down here, and the gap between the top player and the bottom player is so large. Where in ECNL and in the development academy, you got the top player here, you got the bottom player here. So it's not as big of a gap, and it's not causing a lot of these injuries. But also the injuries have going back to too many games, too many practices in a short amount of time. And when it comes to high school soccer, I have a litmus test. If I had a high school aged player that wasn't in danger of falling out of love of the game and really wanted the highest level, wanted to be, you know, a high Division I athlete in ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, I would forego high school soccer. I would. Because of those, you know, I would rather have my kid play another sport in high school than play high school soccer. Just that's my personal opinion. But if I had a son or a daughter who was kind of falling out of love with the game, was getting bored with the game, didn't want to play anymore, I would absolutely love to have them play high school soccer. Because of all the positives. There's definitely positives that come out of high school soccer. Is it the development pathway? No. High school soccer isn't really going to develop your player unless it's a very top player and they're playing in a new position, you know? So that's my opinion on the pros and cons of high school soccer. I'm sure I left some out, but these are the ones that stood out with me. So
stings the nostrils in a good way. Yeah. Brian, I'm gonna be honest with you, that smells like pure gasoline.
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.